Sorry about that. Hi, everybody. I'm Helen. Welcome to FreeThinkers Fireside, where we put the human and humanist one cozy chat at a time. And my guest this week is Nick Soutter, and I did not silence my phone like a good host. So let's say hi to Nick so you can save me from my embarrassment.
Hello.
Hi, I'm a professional. I'm a professional podcaster.
Oh, don't worry. We have at least as many issues on In Time, so don't worry about it.
So why don't you tell the people who may not know you who you be?
My name is Nick. I'm, among other things, I'm an educator. I'm a teacher. I teach middle school and high school. I also have a YouTube channel. It's called In Time. It's an educational program. It's news, politics. We sort of try to break down whatever's going on and help people make sense of the crazy. And we also dissect what mainstream media is and is not covering, and try to make it meaningful in some way. So that's what we do. So that's who I am.
Awesome. I did not put your link to your channel and your doodly doo. I forgot to ask for your link tree, so I apologize. Okay. I will update that later. Again, I'm a professional. so
I'm youtube.com/In Time Show. It's that easy.
Okay. All right. So tell the people why you wanted to talk about this particular topic tonight. Let's give a primer.
It's one of my favorite topics anyway. It's I think a lot harder than people like to think it is. It's education is a genuine problem. It's a problem for every country. It's a problem for every individual. But it's also the single greatest thing that we as a species have or can achieve. I mean, if you think about it, before the scientific method largely coalesced around 400 years ago. Prior to that, okay, we invented glue, rope, fire, stuff like that. After the scientific method, we landed a man on the moon. We've accomplished more in 400 years than in the 200,000 before that. And that's education. So, but what that means is harder than I think people think. So, if education were always successful, nobody would ever have uttered the words President Trump.
That is true.
Yeah.
So here's a question. Yeah. Okay, so because we understand like the internet is, like a double-edged sword. You have all the information, but you also have all the information. And it's hard to for people that may not know how to look things up, what is good information and what is shitty information. So what tool would you offer to somebody to decipher what is bullcrap? Because like it's obvious to us, people that are kind of study this, but for people that might stumble upon my stream and want to learn something about how to look up good information, and how do you tell this?
Oh dear Lord, I can't believe I've forgotten his name.
I know it's a loaded question.
Did the first Nova series. I've forgotten his name. Very famous scientist who stood in front of the New York Public Library and said, "Okay, behind me is approximately 400 million books. If you were to do nothing but eat, sleep, breathe, and read, it would take over 7 generations to get through 10% of those books." So the question isn't what information, or the question isn't how quickly are you going through the information. It's how do you identify, what algorithm do you use to sort through and find the information that you need. Each of us uses a different one, and we learn a heuristic for going through information reasonably early on. The question is, are you flexible with that heuristic, or is it perfectly rigid? I only believe things that come from the Bible, and everything else is I refuse to accept. I believe things that come from the Bible, but I'm willing to consider that maybe there are other things that are true too.
Mhm.
I did once only believe in the Bible, and now I only believe that which has been vetted through science, which, by the way, has its own set of complications. Whatever the heuristic, it usually needs to be one. This is the other. We as human beings, are here for Carl Sagan.
Maybe Titan.
Carl Sagan. And he knew who it was. It was Carl Sagan I was thinking of, who stood in front of the New York Public Library and said that. So, as human beings, unfortunately, we like to think that our brains are geared for accuracy. They're not. They're not hardwired for accuracy in the slightest. They are hardwired for efficiency, which is to say, to get the closest to the right answer in the quickest period of time. And so the question is, how do you take brains that are designed to do that by default? If you're being chased by a wild animal in the savannah and there's like 30 trees in front of you, you don't have to find the best tree to climb. You just have to find an acceptable tree to climb and survive. And so nature selected for human beings who could come up with a good answer quickly, not the best answer over a long period.
Not the best.
Yeah. And we don't think of ourselves that way. So we don't reflect on our own, how we gather information and how we sort through, because there's so much information that comes at you every day, and it's not just the internet. It's crossing the street. There's information coming at you, and you ignore 99% of it. You ignore 99% of your day. The question is, how do you identify the parts you're going to pay attention to? How do you pay attention to those parts and then be malleable enough to change if it looks like you're not getting good results, but rigid enough that you don't just, oh, shiny squirrel, I'll be right back. I got to get a squirrel. You have to find that balance, and that is for everybody. It's a different heuristic, but in my view, truth is that which corresponds to reality. If you can predict the future with at least some accuracy, then you know a fact that is true. I can predict that the sun's going to rise tomorrow, so we can call that, a true fact. And a lot of people have made that prediction, and they've been right for a very long time. Is it possible it won't happen? Yeah, but really, we say it's a fact. We say 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen combine to form water. We know that, and we can predict it, and ergo.
Okay.
Yep.
So, how did you come to like these, like, give a little bit about your background and how you got to, you don't have to give me like the whole like bio, but like,
well, I was born on a summer's day. And...
so, maybe start with college or something like.
Yeah, college. I said I don't want to be employable. I think employment is for suckers. So I got BAs in philosophy and psychology.
I have a BA in psych, and my husband has a BA in philosophy. So
the BA in psych, there's only one thing you can do with a BA in psych, which is get an MA and then do something with it. There's only one thing you can do with a BA in philosophy, which is get an MA and or a PhD and teach it. That's it. You can teach it. That's all you can do.
Thank you. Husband brought me food. He's a good husband.
Yeah. Maybe is he gonna? He didn't bring me anything. I noticed.
No, I'm having a veggie enchilada.
Okay, I'm probably cool then. Actually, I'll be honest.
Okay, good. Anyway, keep going. I'm gonna listen to you while I eat my enchilada.
Okay. No, I've always been interested in teaching, and I was. If I learned something that other people didn't know, I just inherently wanted to teach them about it. And I find the world absolutely fascinating. I find almost everything fascinating. So I get fascinated by things, and then I expect everyone else is going to be just as fascinated. And I learned that people aren't just as fascinated. So what I have to do is learn a lot about a lot of different things, and then find out what fascinates a certain person and say, okay, we'll talk about that. And it could be politics, it could be philosophy, it could be science, yada, yada, yada. So I ended up being a jack of all trades, so that usually there's something I can teach somebody at some point. That's roughly it. And for some reason, I stayed in the P's, in the P section of it. Was philosophy, psychology. I tried to minor in physics, didn't get that one, but that's and when I was in high school, I was actually tutoring college seniors for their finals in computer science. So I was always
Oh, you
good.
big brain.
Yeah, I was good with computers, but I didn't want to do that for a living either. The only thing I ever found that I really enjoyed doing was teaching, and it's not. There's something about realizing that somebody else gets it, and then when you see that they get it, I just enjoy that. There are a lot of ways to give back to the world, but I think teaching well is one of them. So I enjoy it, and I think it's good.
So, what do you teach? I know you said, I'm sorry, I have ADHD brain. What did you say you teach? Sorry.
I'm certified to teach social studies, English, and computer science. Massachusetts doesn't have a computer science certification, so but I'm qualified to teach it. So
Nice.
and for grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. Those are separate certifications. So.
Oh my God, you're working with adolescents. I
haven't never taught middle school.
To use a Christian phrase, bless you.
I've never actually worked at middle school. I've taught high school before. I'm certified to do middle school, but I haven't done it. Middle school, there's a secret about middle school that I heard once and didn't really believe until I was teaching high school, and then I saw it from the inside. I also seen it from the outside when my kids hit middle school, which is the worst teachers in any school district are in middle school. Period. End of discussion. And the reason is nobody wants to teach middle school. The people who want to teach, there are people who want to teach, there are people who want to teach high school level kids because, like, I want to work with young adults and they're just old enough to really understand complex things. So I want to work with the older kids. And then there are ones who say, no, I want to work with, the kindergartners and the this and the that because I can have the greatest impact on them. Nobody says I want to work on the ones in the middle. So what happens is everybody goes for the 1 through 5 or sorry, K through 5 or 9 through 12. Nobody actually applies to be a middle school teacher. But what ends up happening is you get denied at either high school or lower and elementary schools. So you end up going the only remaining place where you can teach, which is middle school. And we actually had a teacher, my first year teaching high school, there was a teacher who got busted on a DUI and he got moved to middle school. It was just hilarious. It was like, we're not going to say his name. And he said he wanted to go to middle school, but it was just like, there was this whole, it was almost like purgatory. It was like, oh, ER banned to middle school. And it was kind of weird. And the worst teachers I've ever seen, well, as my girls got educated, was middle school. It's insane.
I had one teacher I liked in middle school, and it was and she was my English teacher, and she was fantastic because she was just young enough, like she was, a fresh young teacher where she hadn't become jaded.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was that she was the best teacher. Like my other teachers, I was like, because I'm 14 and I don't want to be around other 14-year-olds. So when you're 13 years old, it's all bad. Yep. So no, keep going. I'm listening.
No, I was fascinated. I think it's interesting the progression, the arc of human, the evolution of the human identity for any one individual. That I've noticed it's not only never done, it's never even reached the point that it thinks is there. So when you're in 6th grade and you first show up, let's see. Yeah. So you're in 6th grade, you show up and you see the 8th graders and you say, oh my God, they have it all figured out. That's like when
Right.
I hit 8th grade, that's when I'm going to know everything, because you can see they even
Because everybody has everything figured out
Yeah,
when you're 13, 14 years old.
exactly.
It's the prime time, baby.
And then 8th grade, you're just like, no, it's the high schoolers. I was wrong. It's the high schoolers. You get into high school and you're like, oh, the seniors. That like the world is their oyster. They know everything. They can solve any problem. They got life. And then after that, you're like, maybe I'll have it figured out by college. You get out of college, you're like, I still don't. You've learned rote skills. So hopefully you've got a skill set and are employable, but you're like, I haven't figured life out. So 90% of everybody's time is spent posting to Facebook, virtue signaling to other people that I have life figured out, when really they're terrified that they're going to figure out that everybody is just as insecure as everybody else. It's hilarious. It's just hilarious, and it's part of this social. Nick is dyslexic and weird. Yeah, but he just exactly. Um,
You
anyways,
know what? I'm
yeah,
agree. I'm in agreement.
yeah.
You can be dyslexic, and it's fine. Like, but you're not like Ayn Rand. It's like, okay, we can hang. It's fine.
Okay, we can make- Well,
And my standards for friends are very low.
I defend Ayn Rand a lot, and I get flack for it. But that's the other thing, which is I think if you're educated, you can defend ideas you don't agree with. And I don't think there are a lot of people who actually understood what she was trying to say. She was still wrong. But that again, okay, that's the heuristic of going for, if you see somebody defending an idea, the first assumption you make is they must believe that idea. Well, that's a natural and easy assumption to make. Again, it's the most efficient assumption to make, because most of the time when somebody I'm back. I think I'm back. Don't know if I'm
You're
back.
back. I don't know what happened.
Okay. If you're in a Sam Harris once said this, so I was just like, yeah, it's basically right. He's like, context is everything. He goes, if you're in a philosophy department and you say, I wonder why it's not okay to eat babies. Like, a lot of people will sit down and say, let's think about that. Let's try to figure that out. Why is it not okay to eat babies? And nobody's questioning it. Nobody's sitting there saying that it should be okay. They're in fact agreeing that it's not okay, but they want to know why. They want to understand the metaphysical,
Right.
what's creating the. And in a philosophy department, nobody's going to blink if you say that. You go into a social studies department and say, I wonder why it's not okay to eat babies. It's going to be a very different conversation. So,
well, it depends on demographics and geography. If you're in the social studies,
yeah. Fair enough. Well, and I was going to say, if you're south of the Mason-Dixon line, there's probably going to be different answers to it. I wonder why. I'm not going to get into it, but I'm just going to say there are cultural distinctions about why you can or cannot say certain things. Wonder why it's yeah. I'm not going to get into
listen. I live in Florida, which is not the true South, but it's South enough. Like Florida, we're our own thing. We're not we're South, but we're not South.
Yeah, you're
because we're the penis of the United States. We're our own thing. But we have enough South that you're influenced by Southern culture, and it's strange. So going back to entertaining an idea.
Yeah.
To entertain or argue an idea doesn't actually mean that you agree with the idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think entertaining ideas that you do not agree with is very important for a number of reasons. First of all, we all know what it's like to be wrong. We've all been wrong. We've all been wrong far more times.
I've never been wrong.
Thank you for proving my point.
Right all the time.
Yeah. We've all been wrong far more often than we'd like to admit.
If you say that I've been wrong, you're wrong.
No, I get it. I get it.
Right.
So married 30 years. There's some things you don't say. So, so having said that, Being able to entertain an idea that you do not agree with. There's a couple of interesting things. I thought I was wrong once, but I was.
I love that.
Um, oh dear, where was I?
Being wrong.
Oh yes. Well,
You're married for 30 years. You've
I
been
have so
wrong.
much experience. I have so much experience being wrong. You'd think I'd remember it better, but being able to entertain ideas that are dissimilar to yours does a couple of things. One, it's just a good exercise to keep the brain flexible. Your brain needs exercise too. It's just like any other muscle. It is. It's just like a muscle, and keeping it nice and healthy and entertaining ideas that you disagree with, but entertaining them is a valuable exercise. It also allows you to bridge the gap between yourself and people who are not like you. And if we were able to bridge those gaps more frequently, there would be less physical violence, because when somebody disagrees with you, you have two choices. You can work it out. Three choices. You can work it out, you can ignore them, or if for some reason you can't do the first two, you have to resort to violence of some kind. The antithesis of but that's just that's just sort of a human thing, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's like
I know.
if we're looking for resources, you know, if two tribes are arguing over who owns the lake, you're either going to solve it by trying to understand each other and come to common ground, or you're going to try to kill each other. It's unfortunately, nature is as Hume would put it, life in the state of nature is cold, brutish, nasty, and short. So education is the antithesis of that. So education, being able to, and part of education is, entertain an idea that's not yours, because you can communicate better with the people who have that idea. You can understand them, and it's possible that you're wrong, so maybe you'll learn. And it's so being able to entertain ideas that you do not agree with is, I think, the cornerstone of a good education. And I think it's the only way you can actually learn, because you have to entertain an idea you disagree with in the first place in order to learn if and when you're wrong. Yeah.
So, you went to college, and then did you get your teaching degree right after? When did you start teaching?
I didn't start teaching for a while. I wrote a couple of books. I wrote a book that was about counter to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. It was The Water Thief, and it was written as a novelized rebuttal of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. And I was written that because somebody challenged me. They said, "What do you know about Ayn Rand?" And I said, "Well, I'm a smart guy, so nothing. I have no interest in Ayn Rand." And he said, "You should." You'd really like her work, she's brilliant and all this other stuff. And it was a challenge at first to understand. She's a whole nother topic. Anyways, I got through most of her work, and I said, okay, there's no one thing that she said that I could fundamentally disagree with, and yet I disagreed with all of her conclusions. So I had to, as a guy who had a degree in philosophy, you can't let that slide. You got to sit down and figure it out. And I figured it out, and I said, oh, well, how do I highlight this one point? And I said, well, actually, since Atlas Shrugged is usually considered the seminal work that describes her philosophy, it's a novel, but it essentially novelizes what she thinks a good economic philosophy is. I said, write a rebuttal to it that actually either assumes that it was real, or assumes at least that she's real, and addresses how and why in novelized form back. So that's what I did. Midwest Book Review said it was required reading for everyone who questions authority in this country. So I got great reviews. Nobody bought it. I didn't make any money off of it. So
you wrote a book.
I wrote several, and then I've been doing all sorts of other things. The funny thing was, I had done the Atheist Codex, which was what I wanted to do was an online thing where you could create your own curriculum to learn about humanism. And every major argument for God, every apologetic and every counter apologetic, and they all linked to each other, and you could sort of go around, and you could start anywhere. Like, okay, I'm a prime mover guy. You could start at prime mover and then just move around and see how all the arguments connect. And I had been doing that when I was invited to do a show on prison reform, because I ended up writing a book about prison reform for a whole nother set of reasons. I met a guy who was a psychologist, worked at Walpole Maximum Security Prison for 10 years and wanted to do his biography. And I was just like, yeah, I'm crazy enough to say that's a good idea. That was fun. Anyways, so I did this show about prison reform.
Did you make money off of it?
No.
Okay, well.
No.
Okay, well.
Making money. I really am the philosopher. I'm the. What did the employed philosopher say to the unemployed philosopher? You want fries with that?
Yeah.
So anyways, and then I started a YouTube channel about 5 years ago. I liked the idea that I had a diverse skill set anyway, and I could bring all of it. I knew a lot of history, knew languages, knew all this other stuff. I could bring a diverse skill set into an environment where we could talk about what's going on in the world and try to put some perspective on it. And that was when In Time started.
Okay. Oh, all right. That's you describe it very much the ADHD way of doing things.
I have often suspected I have never been formally diagnosed ADHD, but I do.
It is very much how we do things. Like I have a bunch of skill sets, and I'm going to juice with a bunch of diverse things, and then I'm going to find a way to channel it into something.
I think for people who are ADHD, and again, as someone who's not been formally diagnosed, but I've had more than one therapist say, I'll say this, I think life is determined by boredom. When you find something boring, you have to find a way to move on, whether it's self-sabotage, whether it's whatever it is. When you get bored, you find a way to move on. And I think people without ADHD, they have their problems. That's not one of them.
No. No. I'm very very good at multitasking, and two, I get bored a lot. This is why, like, if you want me to do anything, I'll do it, but I need someone to either motivate me to follow through, or they help me, or they do the follow through for me. It's just a matter like knowing your limitations is a strength.
I've managed. The only reason In Time holds together is because there are people around me who can keep it together, because it's not always going to be me.
I was so lazy when I came up with this podcast. I was like, listen, I want to do a YouTube channel. And then I had a bunch of different ideas, and I'm like, well, I don't want to have to edit anything. I was like, because then I'll have to learn editing software. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And I go, but I know a lot of people, and I like to talk. So, but I just thought I would just ask the guests, like, what do you want to talk about? And this is actually a good thing, because then we talk about a bunch of different topics, and I learn shit.
Yes. That's actually one of the biggest reasons I love doing my show, is how much I learn too. And again, it's the open mind. You go in, and the people, when we have guests who know a lot more about a subject than I do, it's great, because I walk away thinking I'm an expert, because of course I've got Dunning-Kruger, right? I'm just like,
right,
I had not an expert who, has landed on the moon 7 times, so I'm sure I could do it at least once. But yeah, it's the only thing I've learned, I've gotten much better about. I'm still not great about it, but I've gotten much better about doing the behind the scenes maintenance work that really sucks, that has to get done, because I just remember as I'm doing it, this is what helps the show get bigger and helps me get more viewers, and then have a better reach and be able to get the guests that I want to get. So, there's no perfect job, but this is a really good one. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one thing I do really like about this is that it's mine, and I get to do whatever the fuck I want, which is great to a certain extent. But I invite on who I want, if someone wants to be on my show and I'm like, yeah, I think you're right, I can say no. So, because I've had a couple interesting people contact me, and I'm just like, they're like free thinking, a little too free. Yeah, I was like, oh no. So,
yeah, we've had some interesting ones, and they're like, well, In Time is supposed to be, like forward thinking, and you guys are progressive. So here's what and it's like, yeah, we're not. So there's a difference between having an open mind and having your head so open that your brains spill out. I was just like,
Falls out. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I've even this, I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Nope. Not for my show. I am not your circle.
We have the other one we've had, and this is wait till you get one of these because this is fun. We've had this happen probably. I can think of 2 specific times. I'm sure there's more, but what we've had is where a guest for
that's a question.
that is a good Trump supporter on that.
We can ask this about each other. Would you have a Trump? Okay, finish what you're saying, then we can answer.
So we had on a guest who was not who they purported to be. And in both cases, it wasn't their fault. It was a miscommunication. So they hadn't lied, but there was a miscommunication. In one case, it was, I knew the producer of another show, and they said, oh, yeah, we've got Dr. X, Y, and Z who would love to discuss ABC with you. And we said, okay, great. And literally 30 seconds before going live, I was just like, okay, did you want me to introduce you as doctor of this? It goes, oh, no, that's not my doctorate. Like, it's not. What's your doctorate in? And it turns out it's just like another field that's like got nothing to do with what we're going to talk about. And I asked him 1 or 2 basic questions, and we were going to talk a philosophical topic. And I realized if this were intro to philosophy, I would fail him. And he's supposed to be the doctor of philosophy that we were going to have on to discuss philosophy. And I find out as the intro is running, I find out he's an amateur, he's an autodidact, and he hasn't done a well enough job that we would have had him on but for. So I'm just like, oh, this is not going to go well. I've got about 15 seconds to figure out how I'm going to deal with this. And
like, okay, well, I'm like, now I got to pull stuff out of my butt. Oh no.
had that with a guy on climate change too, one of our first shows. And I've been assured by somebody I trusted that this guy was an expert on climate change. He knew nothing. And so we're trying to walk him through this thing, and he's the expert. And we're like, so how do people know that the climate is different? You know, and I rarely ask a question to which I don't already know the answer. So, I mean, I know the answer, but I'm trying to highlight the guests. So like, how do you know that the climate has changed from like, thousands or even 1 million years ago? He goes, that's a good question. And I was just like, oh,
okay. No.
I was like, could it be ice core samples? Do you think maybe ice core samples play into that? Because I've heard a lot about ice core samples. He goes, yeah, I bet you that's it. I should look that up. I said, how do you think an ice core sample could help? He's just like, I don't know. I'm going to go look that up.
God.
Like, and we're only 5 minutes into a show scheduled to last an hour. It's just like,
no.
Oh, there are days.
No.
You're gonna get it. I'm just warning you.
I'm sure I'm gonna get it. I'm sure. Luckily, it's only been friends. So, and people that I trust, but I guarantee somewhere along the line, this person will be like, oh, I want to talk about this. And I'll be like, cool. And then I will not vet correctly. And then I'll go, okay, so you want to talk about climate change. What are your, like, why do you want to talk about this topic? What are your credentials? And then it's like, I worked for Greenpeace for 2 summers. like, oh, okay.
Well, and again, right, we were talking about this earlier. We think that, especially, here's the problem that free thinkers get into, which is thinking that by knowing so many of the pitfalls of human reasoning and the logical fallacies that we can get into, that we are somehow immune to them. Yeah, and it's like, no, go to Twitter.
Child.
I know, exactly. And I would not suggest anybody ever go to Twitter ever again for any reason.
No, you want to be on BlueSky? I'm there. Yep. I'll put my socials again. Go on BlueSky. Do not go on the bad place.
Oh yeah, exactly. But when I was there and when I was active on Twitter, you could see all the atheists doing the exact same, and I was just like, guys, you're supposed to be, but no. One of the ones that we got into is one said, I don't have any beliefs that aren't rationally thought out, and that I don't have a rational defense for. I was just like, okay, yeah, that's not true. Sorry, that's not true. That's just not true of anybody. You can't.
I am sure I don't always know it, because it's hard to know what you don't know. And then when someone points out, goes, well, that's not true. And then like for a second, I'm like, I feel stupid, but then and then I go, oh, I didn't know something, and then I move on.
Yep. So it's and that's the interesting. The other thing that I learned when teaching high school, and I had taught people a lot, but I'd always taught in either volunteer classes, like where I was just like people could learn. I used to teach martial arts. I also taught computer science, stuff like that, but it was a tutor, so it was just a one-on-one. When I was teaching high school, and a lot of the students didn't have a choice but to be in your class, so they did not want to be educated. They did not want to learn. I found I could reach a number of them, and I could reach a number that other people couldn't, but I also found there were some I couldn't, but other teachers could. And that when I started to really understand the difference in learning styles, and that it's very important to realize that there are some people who there are people who think I'm a spectacular teacher, and there are people who are like, I don't see how anyone could learn from that man. That it's just not possible, and it's okay. It's perfectly fine. Find the ones that you can reach, and help the ones you can't reach, help them find the ones that can reach them. And
so quick side note on that one. I was a sophomore in high school. I took geometry, and math and I we just can't date. We tried to have a relationship. It always ends up ugly and people yelling. So like we just can't have a relationship. But my sophomore year in high school, I had a wonderful teacher, Mr. Sleetus, and because I have ADHD and I'm a visual learner, he would use the space in the classroom to explain geometric concepts, and I got an A in that class because I all of a sudden I was like, I understand math. Do I remember any of that? 32 years later, no. But
no.
But I, like that was one of the first times like a teacher like maybe like a subject I never thought I could learn. Just his teaching style made me like, oh, I can learn math. Like I find out that I suck at algebra, but I'm really good at statistics. So
well, and the other thing you have to remember, and I get this a lot, like how much do you really remember of high school? The people who say we need to get rid of high schools and we need to get rid of education.
No.
That's a lot of people south of the Mason-Dixon line say, that's the ones who are arguing to get rid of the Department of Education, the ones who are saying, look, some kids should just start working on the farm, and why do you say that they have to go through high school before they can, and I've seen when I was doing my practicum, I went into inner city schools to do all my practical side of my learning, and there were kids there who the only reason they were there is their parents would beat them if they didn't go, because there was a state law that said that their parents could only get a social security or welfare if the kids were in school. So if the kid dodged or stayed out of school, the parents would beat them because they're like, we need the money, so you're going to school. So that was the only reason they went to school.
That's
they
so
didn't
sad.
Want to go. Yeah.
That's so sad.
But the argument that you hear is, well, how many people remember anything from high school? And the answer is not a lot of people.
I just did.
Yeah, I think of it as a percentage, though. As a percentage of all the classes you took, how much do you actually remember? And the answer is not a whole heck of a lot. But first of all, the parts you remember are not inconsequential. The parts you don't, you may remember at some date when you need it. That happens more frequently than we recognize. And lastly, again, it's a muscle. Go to the gym, and after a guy's lifted weights, he picks them up, puts them down, picks them up, puts them down, picks them up, puts them down. He leaves the gym. Everything's exactly where it was. He didn't build a house. There's nothing that's changed. So what I sit there and when I say about education, it's the same thing when you're learning to write, when you're Titans. His favorite hobby is finding me and distracting me, which he does with
me and Titan's is usually up in a chat together. Or he shows up at a podcast that I'm on. And then I'm like, oh, Titan's here.
So yeah,
but yeah,
and he's a huge part of the show as well. So
he's
every now and
a
then,
wonderful human being.
every now and then, I get completely off subject or something, and I just get a DM from him. It's like, Nick, that's not the topic. I was like, oh, thank you.
I have to get myself on topic, which is please don't. That's why I tell people I'm going to talk about your topic, but if we go into something else, like Neil came on and was talking about his deconversion stories, and guess what we ended up talking about?
D&D.
No, Legos.
Lego. Oh, I should have guessed because he has Lego everything. What was it? He bought that Lego set.
Back to what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Let's bring the train around.
Wherever you want to go, I'm free to go.
So oh fuck! You did say something I was going to make a comment on, and then now it's like, let me catch up with that thought train.
Well, there was we had been talking, at least in part, about people who do not value education, who think it's a waste of time.
So have you found, like, because this is kind of related to the first thing I kind of asked you about, like, how do you, parse through so much information, and then you get people that don't, and this is the thing I find so fascinating and weird. Like, okay, you don't think you need an education, but I'm sure there's something every day these people are learning, just randomly, like someone teaches you, how to use a piece of equipment that you didn't know how to use. That's an education. You got an education. So it seems contradictory to say that you don't need an education when I know someone's teaching you something, motherfucker.
What they mean is you don't need the ivory tower. And again, that's a distinction that you and I would make, but someone who doesn't value education doesn't understand the difference.
Right.
To them, it's, what they really mean is you don't need the ivory tower, but they agree, if they've, I knew a guy who had worked auto parts and highway construction for a long time, and the shit that he knew that blew my mind. And I was just like, I had no idea this much went into, and he's just like, yeah, when you have to take into account the temperature variances, the roads expanding, contracting, whether you've got electrical lines under them or not, whether you're, and I'm sitting there going, oh shit, I'm glad I don't do that shit. I'd get my ass killed the first day. I was like, what's this device? He's like, oh, that's the power washer. Oh, so you can wash your house? He goes, no, that's like a laser. That'll cut through shit. I was just like, you're kidding. He goes, no, if you put your hand in front of that, there will be a fine cut. The water is so powerful coming out of that because it'll cut steel. I was just like, oh, geez.
No.
So,
yeah,
I think. Most of us have a chip on our shoulder, and whether
I'm very proud of my chip.
You are.
I'm very proud of it.
Well, us ivory tower elites are very. Oh, his name is like, you've given him a name too. Congratulations. Yeah,
his name is Larry, and he tells me I'm a very good girl.
Mine is the Northeastern liberal elite chip.
Yeah, I have that too. I have that I went to college chip.
Yep.
I'm more woke than you, Chip. I have a lot of chips.
That one's been that. Yeah, we all. Yeah, you're right. I should have said we all have a lot of chips on our shoulder.
Right.
The one that thinks they don't have a chip on their shoulder, but has a chip just as big as the liberal elites is the working man chip. It's like, well, I work for a living, so that makes me better than you because I'm not part of this ivory tower thing. And this gets back into putting yourself into somebody else's argument and somebody else's headspace for a while, which is that, or the ADHD, that gives you certain advantages in your ability to multitask that most people don't have. So if you can end up finding something that plays to that, you will end up being more successful. We all have areas where we're more successful or less successful. The idea that a college education or that being educated is insignificant, unimportant, or easy, all of those are fucking moronic ideas. They are really bad. I forgot to ask if we can swear, but
you can swear. I swear all the fucking time. It's my show.
Perfect. Great. I'm glad. Now I'm really glad to be here. So as I was fucking saying.
Go ahead. Like I said, this is not a family show.
So, I've seen before, we've all seen the bumper sticker, no farms, no food.
Yeah.
Two things about that. One, that's absolutely true. And us ivory tower elites sometimes look our nose down at the farmers that are keeping us alive.
No,
Cities
I don't.
have a lot of, good.
I'm not doing that fucking work. And I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for providing me with food so I can live. Thank you so much.
Well, in the cities where we ivory tower elites like to live and work, have vast amounts of information. They have, I'm right near Boston. I used to be in Boston, lived just on the outskirts of Boston. So it's like you got mass transit, you've got, some of the best libraries in the world. You can go take an ocean cruise, see the whale watches. You can do all this stuff. You know what you can't do? You can't actually pick corn off because everything's paved. You can't feed. There isn't enough food. If Boston suddenly stopped getting food coming into it, holy smoke!
Holy shit!
Yeah. So that bumper sticker,
you're going to be running to like the outskirts of Mass, going to like apple orchards and be like, help me.
Help us farmers. So the farmers have a right to point that out. But what they also like to forget is it's the ivory tower elites that helped engineer food that was better tasting. People say I haven't eaten an MGO.
Yes, you have.
Yeah.
Have you ever had seedless watermelon? Yes, you have.
Any apple.
Have you had a banana?
Yep. Banana. Have you had bread? Wheat. Spelt is the original wheat. So unless you only eat spelt, you've had a GMO. If you've had any apple except a crab apple, those really bitter ones, those are the original apples from which every apple that we have brewed.
I think it's the word genetically modified that it kind of freaks their brains out because they don't understand what that means. So they think it sounds like mad scientist shit. It's like, no, I'm like, you're always eating genetically modified food. Like your apple, like a lot of your fruits and vegetables, this is not the original state, people. Just letting you know.
I think their concern is that it's in a lab. I think that's the concern. They don't, the lab is scary. And by the way, labs kind of should be scary because labs have scary stuff in them. I mean, there are plenty of labs that work with gases like methane or, any that work with phosphorus. There are labs that, even a Bunsen burner can be quite dangerous, especially if you leave it on.
Yeah, I remember all the warnings when I was in chemistry class. Like we've all like that. I remember from high school.
And then when you start talking, you take a look at the movie Outbreak, which was about essentially a hemorrhagic fever outbreak. That was a good movie.
A weird, like it's okay. Like let me preface. I don't love it. Like I love like the Lord of the Rings kind of love, but I love that they got a lot of the science right. And so it was very, obviously it was, up for dramatic effect, but all the science is there about like how diseases spread and all that type of stuff. And it's entertaining. It's a very good movie, so I love it, but, and like, I admire it. Not,
I get exactly.
Escapism, like I want to live in the Shire love. So
you wouldn't. I love it. I don't have it in my video collection. I don't watch it or rewatch it. Once you've seen it, not what it was trying to say. Yeah.
Like we watched I Am Legend during the pandemic, like a few times. That was our pandemic movie. So, like, everybody had a pandemic movie. Yep. So back to so labs are scary. Let's go back to labs are scary.
So the no farms, no food guys forget that the reason we can support right now 8 million people is because farms are far more productive than they've ever been. And with the ability, the yellow rice that we're making that has rice that contains vitamin B and can be enough to, feed. We actually really already have enough to feed starving populations. The problem is getting the food there. But that notwithstanding, a lot of these people end up also being pro-military types. So you do get a lot of people who are hardcore conservative, do not trust ivory tower, and say, well, we don't need labs or research or anything like that. I was like, do you think the U.S. has the strongest military in the world? Goddamn right we do. Okay. How did we get depleted uranium shells? Those are the strongest, most powerful shells on the planet, and they weren't invented by a farmer. The F-35, the stealth fighter that blocks radar. Radar wasn't invented by farmer, neither was the radar blocking technology that we use that allows us to drop, whatever. You can have lots of disagreements and
How do
problems
we
with the
get
average tower site,
GPS?
but yeah, the Jeep, which
How do we
farmer?
get it? And
Yeah,
you and I bet Mr. Joe Schmo, Mr. Conservatives, like, we don't need labs. It's like,
yep.
I'm like, do you have a phone?
Well, and
Do
the
you use Google
pesticides
Maps?
that they use, that are so effective and allow them to have better crop yields,
Crops. Yep.
Yeah. So it both sides need to find a way to understand that A, they really don't want to do the work of the other, but what the other does is work. I've had more than a few people like, okay, you've been in ivory tower, you've never really worked, at all. You know what? I don't have any calluses, but having said that, you want to go sit down and run a whole bunch of numbers and try to figure out, or read through the latest Supreme Court decision and try to figure out what it really says and how it's going to affect, 300, 400 million people. You go ahead and do that. It's not easy. That's not easy. And you get tired by the time you're done with it, and you don't want to ever look at it. You were doing algebra. It's like, if it were okay, you think it's easy, then why'd you quit high school? Because it wasn't easy.
No, it wasn't.
I can hear
Well,
you,
and the thing,
but I'm going to get more water. I'm going to get more water, but I can still hear you.
Okay. So, like, when I went to high school, like, I didn't quit it or anything because there was actual things that I was actually interested in learning. Like, I love English. I love history. I took a intro to psych class, and that's what inspired me to take, took me a little bit of time, but really get into psychology. That happened in high school. So it's weird that when people say, like, and the thing is, though, is that I understand why people want to go back to the time that you could get a decent job on a high school education. But the world isn't there anymore. And I wonder also too, this is my kind of thinking about Mr. Joe Schmo, that college is expensive. So it's a lot easier to say, like, I don't need this. Like, why would I retire, kind of thing. Because to them it's not attainable, so it's easier to write it off than to actually say the system is fucked. So I think there's a little bit of that too.
Well, and China and Japan are both investing heavily in education, and we have had a number of recent presidents, who don't think education is important. And the Department of Education
blows my mind.
Yeah. And it's one of the things that I've started to with Donald Trump, make America great again. I'm sitting there going, we have the most powerful military on the planet. In fact, we have the most powerful military that any group of human beings have ever had at their disposal. We have the strongest economy that any group of human beings have ever had at their disposal. We have the most amount of free time and the most number of things you can do with that free time. You can sit there and play video games. You can go to a movie. People couldn't do that 400 years ago. You can do more things. You can interact with more people. I can talk to somebody on the other side of the world right now, get on any number of platforms and do it. We can do all of this stuff, and we have to make America great again. Could somebody explain to me if we're at the
broken?
The best? Yeah. Well, I agree that we're broken, but the problem is more, again, it's a lack of investment in education. It's a lack of investment in the future. It's all about what can we do for our constituents now so they vote me back into office. And that's what you see. I make America measly again. That's what you see Trump doing is really just, and he's very, very good at it, is just, getting that little endorphin hit which I've heard this said a lot. I actually think it's true. I've looked it up, but it's been a while. The single best indicator of success, the single best test, it's not an IQ test, it's not the SAT, single best indicator of success for a human being is the marshmallow test.
Oh yeah, I've heard them. I learned that in psychology.
Yeah.
early childhood psychology class, actually.
Yep.
So I did learn about this. It's really good. It's a very interesting study.
Say, listen, I can give you one marshmallow now or two marshmallows tomorrow. The child who says two marshmallows tomorrow is a child who understands delayed gratification. That means that their prefrontal lobes are such that they can understand how to predict things, how things will happen sequentially in an order, and how to benefit from it. And that all of us can do that to some degree, but the people who can do that more tend to be far more successful for obvious reasons. It doesn't have to. Yeah.
Of course, you passed the marshmallow test.
I doubt I did. I doubt I did. Yeah.
I don't know if 4-year-old Helen could pass the marshmallow test. I don't think she could. But it also shows that, like, you know, understanding certain things can be learned. You know, think of anyone that's come out of religion and then, you know, develops more of a skeptical mindset. That's learned behavior. You know, that doesn't, you don't pop out of the womb knowing that, you know, and
that is
and
true.
I think also too, then you realize on top of that, like, how much do I not know? And I need to become more educated about it. If you're being honest about your, you know, like, I always have this thing though, because like, I always say this, like when I started, you know, in the 2010s, consuming atheist content, it was a bunch of cis white straight guys, and Gamergate was going on. Fun. And then I was like, okay. And then I realized that, yeah, you can be a skeptic and not think God exists, but also think that, like, I'm just here because I'm a woman and I'm not as intelligent as you because I own a vagina. Or, you know, queer people shouldn't exist because it goes against nature or whatever. And you're just like, okay, well, yeah, you've rejected God, but you also haven't, like, looked through your own, like, you haven't been educated on other things that you need to be educated on. It'd be really great.
There is a lot of that hubris. I don't think there's quite as much. So I want to address two things. First of all, Titan had said a short while back, efficiency is hardware, logic is software. And I think that's a very elegant way of putting it. So yes, these things can be learned. You're going to have a predisposition towards learning some things better than others, and some people are smarter than others. Just have a predisposition to understanding certain things better, and some people don't. But for the most part, there's a lot of software that, and education is that. It's trying to get the software in place. I have a number of theist friends. Some of my best friends are ministers. I know a Benedictine monk. He and I get along very well. One of my best friends is a Greek Orthodox minister and a minister in the Anglican Church. So, you know, and they, most of them, when they first encountered atheists, hated them and like, these are horrible people. And then they learned very quickly, oh, it's because I encountered them on social media. And one of the things I've learned about a lot of the,
social media is a cesspool.
Well, and
I'm on social media and it's a cesspool.
A lot of the atheists there that I found, they never believed in God. Even as a kid, they weren't deconverted. They just never believed in God. And then we're on social media and realized that they could get in fights with people for not believing in God, and it was socially acceptable. So they'd go around bullying people, saying, I don't believe. They didn't do it because they had any anti-theism. They just did it because it was socially acceptable in the atheist community to go around bashing theists. And it's the theists I get along with.
And then, like, insulting their intelligence. And I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, you're debating a philosophical framework. You're not debating whether someone, you know, is intelligent or not, because belief is not a measure of intelligence. You know, because trust me, I met plenty of atheists are a bunch of fucking idiots. So it's not really a measure.
Yep.
Sorry.
Well, no, it's so I get it's actually kind of the same thing with the Ayn Rand thing, which is somebody will
Yeah.
say Ayn Rand said X, Y, and Z. I said no, she didn't. She did not say that. She abhorred this. She abhorred that, and this is how she. Because I had to learn her arguments as well as her best supporter, so that I could be credible in taking them down.
To be fair on Ayn Rand, the only thing I know about her philosophy is a Wikipedia article and when I played BioShock. I don't agree with this sort of selfish sort of form of capitalism. Like, I know that's part of her philosophy, but if you were going to ask me, like, do you know anything about Ayn Rand? I'm like, this is what I know. I go, that particular ideology, I do not agree with. Do I know anything else about any other ideologies or thoughts? No. But so you stick to your lane. You stick to what you know, knowing what you know.
So that's why people think I'm for Ayn Rand, because I'll defend her ideologies when people get what she said wrong, but it doesn't mean that I agree with them. And people think I'm a theist. On Twitter, I was being called a theist all the time. They're like, "Oh, you're just a theist." Who's no, I'm an atheist. Well, then why are you defending the theist? I was like, because you're attacking them when they haven't done anything to you. Oh, but they have irrational beliefs. Yes, so do you. I can prove that to you if you'd like. That's not that hard. I took philosophy. Everybody has irrational beliefs. No, that's not true. I have none. Oh, let's have some fun. So
I did a whole talk on magical thinking.
Yeah.
And you can have magical thinking and not have any superstitious beliefs.
Yep. So we talked earlier about some of that hardware, about the fact that we are hardwired for efficiency, not for accuracy. And so you have to train yourself. Scientists have to train themselves to follow certain procedures that will ensure a higher degree of accuracy, but take more fucking time than they would like to naturally do. And so that's just what becoming a scientist is, training in those steps. The other thing that we do is we are extremely adaptable. We're I think the most adaptable species on the planet. We may not be by some metrics, but we're obviously, because of our intelligence, one of, if not the most adaptable species on the planet as it is today. And but that comes with a downside, which is we sit here and have people gripe about how hard it is living in the US today, when again, we don't have polio, we don't have measles, we don't have all of these diseases.
Didn't have measles.
We didn't until we don't live in villages that everybody's getting septic diseases because
everybody's getting cholera on a regular basis.
Exactly. Yeah. That's not to say we don't have a right. We have a right to complain. We absolutely have a right to complain. I'm not suggesting that, how could we possibly complain? We have a right, and in fact, a
obligation.
Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. An obligation and a moral duty to complain. But I think that complaint needs to be tempered with an understanding that we have it pretty well comparatively. And the only way we get to keep it pretty well is if we acknowledge that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. That was also another Carl Sagan. I think that was Carl Sagan. If I have seen any further than anyone else, it is because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. Yep. And so when we start to not appreciate it and vote in people who say, we don't need an education, we don't need this, we don't need to take care of each other.
You don't have to bring up the sad. Okay.
Well, but my point is when things start to get too good, we adapt, and so we start to attack other people based on their ideologies, based on the color of their skin, based on their heritage, based on their eye or hair color. And we do this because we're not preoccupied with all the things of living, but our brains are still operating on this. I have to adapt to my environment. So we create new fake challenges. The reality is, the war of the sexes, how long has that existed? Not as long as you think. It's existed much more as a modern concept because we've only had free elections where anyone could vote, sort of as a much more recent.
It's only 200 almost just 275 some odd years old. So it's not that long.
Well, democracy, the idea of democracy has been around for a while.
I can't do math.
In the US,
I said, like I said, me and math do not date.
Oh dear!
But it's one of those things that if
you will let anybody into this live chat. Jesus, Math Pig is here. I was just.
I don't know who he is.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Okay, I don't know.
Hard time.
Like people
guy.
just show up, and I'm just like, I don't know who this is. Like as long as they're not being a asshole, you can stay.
Well, he's going to be an asshole, but keep him.
Well, okay, I should be fair. I'm going to rephrase. You're not going to be a butthead. Butthead means that butthead's the word. You mean asshole, but you can't be a butthead. There's distinctions. So, but it's one of those things because also too, like, and I'm like, whenever I'm online, like this is why I don't engage in online arguments, because my emotional center is triggered, which means I'm not a rational brain. I'm reacting. You said something makes me angry. I'm going to react. It's not productive for having an intelligent conversation. Second of all, you tend to forget there's another human being at the end of the keyboard. And you see this a lot because if you're just an ideology to me, you're not a person. I don't know you, and that person doesn't know me, and it's very easy for people to fall, because I have to consciously remind myself that the words on a screen is not the complete person, like for example, my coworker is a Trump supporter, but she's a very kind, really nice person. If I just saw her as a Trump supporter, I couldn't get along with her, if I just went by just her, that, but I also realized that she's woefully uneducated because I just had a couple conversations with her and I was like, oh my God, you were like not plugged in at all. And I'm like, oh, because if you talk to her, like she hates fascism, she hates but also at the same time, she doesn't understand, history. So then you go, oh, okay, well, and I'm not saying it's an excuse for being ignorant, but also at the same time, like I don't want to be cruel to people.
Well, and you're right, and it's hard. It becomes even harder when you're making an effort to see the other person on the other side of the keyboard. He's a good guy. When he's the one thing though, he will offer to show you a picture of him in a bikini. Say no to that.
Hot.
Say no to that. I'm just telling you.
Listen, you don't know my kinks. You don't know my kinks.
Ask Neil 604 about that when I sent it to Neil during a live stream. And he was like, oh, Nick just sent me some. Whoa! That was live stream was done. It was over. Like, thanks, Nick. I was like, yeah, no problem, Neil, anytime. Anyways. We adapt and we have to have some conflict. Conflict is a motivator, and there's a lot of discussions, especially in philosophy, the ones who like talking about could you ever actually have a utopia, because wouldn't a utopia would still necessarily need something to challenge us. We identify by overcoming challenges, and that's why social media is a cesspool. So it's hard to, well, you had given the example of try to always see the other person as a human being. Then if they're not seeing you as a human being, and I don't know how to solve those problems. The woman who her daughter didn't get into the high school cheerleading team, so she created fake accounts, bullied the girl that beat her out to the point of suicide. Right. And it's like, okay, we have to recognize that there is a profound problem in our psychology, that it just never occurred to her that she was doing this to a human being or what the consequences of that were. And I think we all have some of that in us, but the rest is education. The rest is exposure. And there's a reason. Yeah, there's another thing. This is just an interesting phenomenon.
Right.
Liberals have always been in the cities. Conservatives have always been in the rural areas, always
Yep.
dawn of time, Greeks all the way going back. And the reason is
Yep.
because when you're in the cities, you're forced to interact with different kinds of people than you. That's what a
Right.
city is. It's a lot of people. You can't avoid trans or gay people in the city. So you're going to end up realizing that A, you're going to have to work with them. And then B, you're going to find out, oh my God, some of them might actually be really cool people that you like. But that
Yeah.
can only happen in a city. In the rural areas, they get very sheltered from that. And we as a species are also
Very
afraid.
tribal.
We're afraid of that which we do not understand.
Right.
So a trans
And I'm not
person can be
saying tribal
scary.
is a bad thing. Like I hang in an atheist tribe. I hang in a queer tribe. I hang in a free thinker tribe. Like this is my friend group. But until you're like, for example, my coworker, I like before that, Trump voters are an ideology, and then you talk to someone that you see as a human being, and then you're like, oh, and it's not as easy I was like it to be. And it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing when you're forced against somebody that, because like theism's one thing. Like I'm like, okay, you believe in God, like whatever. But also at the same time, like people are complicated. You can believe in, like, I'm not racist. I care about other people, also at the same time vote for someone like Trump and not realize I honestly do not think she recognizes who she voted for. Like I really she like I people are like, no, they can't. I'm like, no, I don't think this woman knows who she voted for. It's just from having conversations with her. Is it an excuse? No, but at least I can recognize it and go, okay, like, but she's still a good human being. And if I went around and wanted everyone to think like me and to do everything the way that I did it, no, that's why I don't believe in a utopia. Because like I was telling Nassar when we were having this conversation, like, in my utopia, there might be a taco truck on every corner, but in your utopia, it might be like pizza, and then it's not a utopia because there's always going to be something that somebody else is not going to like because we're complicated. There is no utopia.
And what I like that you mentioned too was that discomfort when your belief that you don't like the Trump ideology. So the natural conclusion from that, the most efficient conclusion from that, is all Trump supporters are bad people.
Right.
And then when you meet someone who isn't, you get challenged. And again, we have to come up with some kind of algorithm or heuristic for sorting the mass amounts of data. So we make assumptions. All of us make a huge amount of assumptions just to function in life. But you have to be willing to challenge them, and you have to be willing to have them challenged. And there are people who sit there and say to me, why? And that's a good question. The answer that I always come back with is, if you're an ethical human being, the reason you have to is because unless you're living completely by yourself, your actions affect other people. So your assumptions affect those people too. So if you're going to make an assumption that is going to cause you to treat people in a way they should not be treated ethically, that is immoral, that assumption has to be challengeable. So if you don't care about being a good person, well, then you're a psychopath. If you do care about
then
being
you're
a
an
good
asshole,
person,
and
you have to be
like,
willing
and
to,
then and your life is gonna be really fucking hard anyway because nobody's gonna want to hang around with you. Like it's gonna be hard. So but but the majority of the population is yes, I think that most people are good people, but again, people that are on the wrong side of history think they're good people. So
everyone thinks they're a good person. That's one of the things I love about when I'm doing anti-theistic work. One of the things I'll point out is that 99% of Christians think the other 99% of Christians are all going to hell. I mean, even within the Catholic Church is now a plurality. I don't think it's the majority anymore, but it's the plurality. In the Catholic Church. Yeah, that if you're not in the Catholic Church, exclusium nunca salus, outside of the church, there is no salvation. So if you're not in, it doesn't matter if you're Christian.
Catholic.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. But what I've noticed about most
Catholics, I'm going to hell, by the way, everybody. Just so let y'all know.
And we have a fire all
wait,
around us already.
No, wait a second. I was baptized and I made my confirmation, and So I'm in. I'm good.
Well, and that's the thing. There,
I just have to say that I really love Jesus before I die and do a confession, and I'll be fine.
And there are people who agree with that, and there are quote Catholics who don't. There are Catholics who agree that as the Vicar of Christ on earth, what the Pope says is essentially the word of Jesus. And people say no, it's
he was dying this morning. I don't know if he died yet.
I don't. Yeah, he's been dying for at least a couple of days.
I know, but like yes, I know he's been dying. Like I'm just waiting for it. Okay, like
then
like,
we get the white smoke and yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the Cardinals to vote, and I'm like, okay, because like it's a very silly tradition, but also too like this is my third pope. This is my third pope. It's
I don't
wild.
know what number for me. I remember probably the pope that did the greatest damage to the human species, Pope John Paul II.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And Pope Benedict just drove.
Yeah. Benedict stepped on that gas
John
pedal,
Paul
didn't he?
walked
Yes,
and like, and then Benedict took the brush. Was like, I'm gonna run with this thing.
Yep. Yeah, Benedict was a bad one. I'm a little curious as to why he resigned when he did. I get the feeling there was pressure from
there.
Yeah.
I know how the Cardinals and like all that operate. It's very political, and it's very much a boys' club, and it's very much about like appearances and maybe sticking your hands into things that you're not supposed to be sticking your hands in. Like there's a vibe.
Yep. Yeah.
If you look at church history,
most of them are atheists.
The recent church history, there's some shit. Not when we're going to talk about Catholics, but because I could talk about Catholics.
Oh God, we could do a whole show on here. Invite me back.
I could do a whole show on Catholics. Let's talk about the Catholic religion. It's really fucked up. Let's talk about it.
And most Catholics think that most other Catholics are going to hell because they have a different interpretation of what the Pope says. So it's and
there's the whole debate of you to believe in transmute.
Now I can't think of the word, but yeah, the water actually becomes stop
water,
saying
it. Body and blood of Christ. Body and blood, Christ. Word Catholic. It will tell me. It will. Google will tell me. Transubstantiation.
Transubstantiation.
It's a very long word. Like I knew it. I just and like there's a debate. Like if you literally believe that this is a body of blood, so that makes you a cannibal, or two, it's just symbolic. That like that's a debate within the church of people that really believe it's happening, and people that don't. And I'm like,
and if there is a God. And his view is so narrow that these arguments actually matter, then the number of people who are getting into heaven is probably 1 or 2 total.
Well, like it's always like the good place. It's like only so many people get in, and then all the rest are like in the bad place because like the ethics are so complicated. Like and I'm sitting there like if you're an all powerful being, like what does it matter? Like if people are arguing whether the body and blood of your son is real or like really real,
which suggests
to me the gesture.
The ministers that I'm friends with, for the most part, all believe one thing, which is that God has established it to be this convoluted because the process of figuring it out is what's important. And part of that process is
mysterious
the process
ways
of engaging with your brothers and sisters. So he's like, most of them are like, Nick, you're getting into heaven. And the reason is you don't have to, because I do believe in the Bible. I do believe in this, but I believe that people have to be genuine and people have to want to help other people and help their brothers and sisters. That's what Jesus taught. So because you want that, even if you don't have the right ideology, because I could have the wrong ideology too. And I was just like, okay, you and I are going to get along. It's like you and I are going to get along
like
well.
that's fine. Like I'm always like, this is the thing I say, like I would rather hang around with a Christian that thinks that everybody deserves human rights and should be treated with decency regardless of differences, versus the atheist who doesn't.
Yep. Oh yeah. Oh Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah, I would much rather hang around with a Christian. And I know Christians that are like that, and we get along perfectly fine. It's just because I don't care. As soon as you start talking bigotry to me, I'm like, yeah, but no, we don't need to be even associated with one another, because you're not a nice person. So, and that's my line. We can debate about like politics and things like that, but like if you start spouting some bigotry, I'm like, we're done. No.
So you said
I don't have patience.
You said something earlier that I really like, and it's in the book, The Talented Mr. Ripley. I think they put it in the movie too, just at the very end, where he says, no human being, no matter how bad a thing they've done, no matter how many crimes they've committed in their lives, no human being actually thinks that they're a bad person. And I like that line, and I think, again, I did the memoir of a prison psychologist, and I spoke with people who murdered upwards of 30 people, and they felt completely justified in it, and they had no and so it's one of the things. Again, the education is, in my view, the antithesis or the antidote to the Hobbesian state of nature, or man in nature, which is where life is cold, nasty, brutish, and short. But it's education not just in terms of learning 1 + 1 = 2, learning how to make water, learning all the basic science, but it's the education of where we live in relation to other people. And actually, just going to be a self plug, but that's sort of why the show was called In Time, was because the idea is, okay, that we are living now in a time relative to other times. It wasn't the Nick Soutter show. It wasn't it was about understanding culture and politics and trying to bring all of this together in a form that people can understand. And one of the things that makes my day that I love is there's been, in our live chats recently, people who say, okay, I haven't been able to understand what's going on with Trump and all the politics, and you guys summarize it and then say, this is what we see, and this is we give our perspectives, this is what we think about it, but we delineate, and like that really helps me to understand. So I'm always delighted when those are my favorite responses. So
yeah, and I think that's the most important thing is like, because I'm like, explain to me like I'm 5. Like that's because then I'm like, okay, now I get it. Like because like I have a pretty good political diet, but also I'm trying to I'm trying to find more of a leveling this time around, because like the first 4 years I was doom scrolling all the time, and this one I'm being much more selective. Like 4 days out of the week I don't consume any news. And the reason why I hear it, but I'm not like diving into about everything that's going on. And then the other days I do. The reason I'm doing this is because, one, I have to keep my sanity, and two, the real fight I want to fight, I want to harness my energy to go to that. And I think, and if you're constantly doom scrolling and think that everything is hopeless, and that's what damages you. You have to take breaks. And then focus your energy, where you want it to go. Like you're doing your podcast, like doing, here, I'm going to get an expert on that actually understands, Supreme Court law. Cool. Please explain, the type of cases that they're seeing and what does that mean? And, because if you ask me to read it, like I've tried, my husband studied for his paralegal and had me read some stuff. And I was like, I don't understand what I'm reading. I'm like, there's words here.
Some of them aren't English too.
Yeah, like I've tried reading, like reading legal documents. I'm like, this is why I didn't go to law school.
Yep.
But I love the law. Like I do. I love it. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't I don't, people way smarter than me, way smarter. No, and I want to correct that. I am a very smart person. I am just not smart in law. Like, I'm smart in other things. And as my friend Cara pointed out, is that when you get like a specialty in something, is that you do like this very narrow path, but this very narrow thing, you become super specialized in, and you're the person that knows the thing.
Yep.
But everything else, not so much.
That's the other thing about education too, which is there's a law of declining returns. As you understand any topic, it takes a lot more work to learn just a little bit more about a topic, and that's why there's so few experts, is because there's a law of declining returns on learning any subject. Carl Sagan would on occasion opine on subjects outside of astrophysics, and was known for thinking that he always knew what he was talking. No, it wasn't Carl Sagan. Sorry, it was I confused him with and Carl Sagan was, by the way, he was the one who the first one that I saw that said that as an anti-theist, you have to be kind and remember that not everyone is born with the same tool set. And yeah, that if you see anything. So I'm thinking Stephen Hawking, who was known for opining on subjects that he was not qualified to opine on, but it's like he's one of the world's smartest human beings. On the flip side, it's like, wait a minute, you're not an expert on this.
But like, fine, you're very good at astrophysics and cosmology. Like, you're very big brain. Good for you. I don't think you should be talking about like biology, like, or like something that isn't in your field. Like, you might be educated on it, but you would say like, based on what so and so said, this is what I learned. Like, but you don't sit there, like I always say, like, I learned this. I go, I don't know if I'm 100% right on it, but I go, this is what I've learned. This is what I've heard. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Because I know I'm wrong a lot.
The one I get into,
I'm not wrong.
I think it's a bit more of a, he was asked it maybe because someone thought it was an astrophysics question. I don't think it is. What would happen if aliens encountered us here on Earth? If aliens were to see our planet?
Oh my God.
And what he said is we'd get wiped out. And the reason is because what you can see throughout human history is indigenous species getting wiped out when humans arrived, or a superior set of humans. Well, okay, but first of all, that's a sample size of one. And second of all, what I think we're learning, what I hope we're learning, and this gets back again to education, is that we really can't survive without each other. But it's not just each other. We can't survive without the animals that are, quote, beneath us as well. We're all part of the same system. So in order to have society, you have to have compassion. The only reason we were able to form even the first tribes was we were able to feel empathy for our other tribesmen, and those who didn't got kicked out of the tribes and were unable to survive. So nature selected for compassion or a slightly higher intelligence where you could become a psychopath and pretend to be compassionate. One of those two. So nature selected for that,
but not all the majority of psychopathic people are not violent.
Correct.
Because they've learned to play the game.
Exactly. So now what we're learning is we're going to hit a threshold where if we're more compassionate, we will survive and continue to explore the universe. And if we're less compassionate, we'll nuke the entire planet and kill everybody. We almost had that during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so as our technology ability grows, if our ability to understand and work together does not grow with it, I think we'll wipe each other out. So what I would expect to see, and this is an anthropological question, not an astrophysics question, what I would expect to see is life on other planets be roughly the same way. The species that learn to work together and cooperate, that learn compassion, are the most successful. If they cannot, but they also do need to have adrenal glands. They need to have the ability to fight. They need to have the ability to be able to slaughter animals, to eat, to do all this other stuff. So it depends on where that balance is. And those that lean on the side of compassion will survive long enough to learn space flight. Ergo, any alien species that learns space flight would probably have at least as much, if not more, compassion than us as a species, and probably would not wipe us out unless it was necessary, in their view, for some reason. That's my argument.
Right.
But because I'm arguing against Stephen Hawking, people are like, well, who are you to fix Stephen Hawking? I was like, it was an anthropological question. I can answer it.
Like I should pose, my friend Kara I can pose it to Kara. Kara is an anthropologist, has a PhD in it, and I'll be like, hey, what do you think what would happen if aliens encountered us? And I'll have them answer that question because they'll have better insight by studying different groups of human beings. But as you said, if they have developed time space travel, interstellar space travel, they work together. So like obviously they work together enough and evolved that, hey, we're all going to get along and we're going to go to other parts of the galaxy together. Let's do that.
It seems to me at some point nature is selecting out the more self-destructive species, the ones that can't, and we may end up on that. I don't know. We don't know yet, right? But and that's where we get back.
It tends to lean.
It's a circle.
It's a circle. Well, the thing is, though, is that throughout human history, like people will say, like, "Oh, we're living," and I'm like, no, actually, like we're living in one of the best times. Crime is down. Our economy is really strong. You know, like the unemployment rate is going to fluctuate. You know, and all that type of stuff. It's just, you know, math and economics, all that type of stuff. But the majority of people don't want to be hurting, and they're going to work to be in a society where they're not being threatened and they're not being a threat, because everybody wants to feel safe. So, you know, and the only time people will, you know, unless you're a psychopath and you're violent, if you are being violent is because of desperation. If you're getting all your basic needs meeting, you don't have any reason to go like steal somebody's car.
That's one of the
things. Unless you're being an asshole, and there are those people that are just assholes, but buttheads. Sorry, not assholes, buttheads. They're being buttheads. So
one of the things I tried to instill in my daughters is an understanding that most of the time, when somebody is being mean, is being deliberately cruel, is you know, not just beyond ignorance and unaware of what they're doing, but is actually a bully, is deliberately causing pain to another person. 9 times out of 10, it's because of their own suffering. It's because somehow they're suffering inside, and the only way that they've learned to alleviate that suffering is to pass it on to other people. And it is more efficient in terms of efficiency, again, to pass on pain than it is to pass on love.
Well,
passing
the path of least resistance.
Yep. It's easier. It's easier to be a jerk than it is to be a nice person. But the nice people are the ones who ultimately get things done.
This is why fascism doesn't last.
It
typically doesn't, because people, there's usually a bunch of other people going like, no. So, you know, like that's why I have like a little bit of hope. It's not much, but I tend to lean on hope. It might be a fool's hope, but I tend to lean on hope rather than despair, because I throughout my life I've seen the goodness of humanity more than I've seen the awfulness. So, you know, that's my perspective. You know, you don't have to, you know, you like, again, you don't have to agree with that, but it's just, you know, my perspective. You don't have to agree with my perspective. It's just my perspective.
I very much agree with your perspective, but I don't want to be agreeable, so I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay, you can disagree. That's fine. Right. Be a classic philosopher.
Exactly. just
be contradictory forever.
Could you tell me what your perspective is so I can disagree with you, please?
That's right. That's it. My perspective is that the world is not as bad as we think it is.
Okay. Yes, it is. It's worse.
Okay,
I'm going to be Marvin from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Right.
I could tell you what our odds of survival would be.
It is.
But you won't
chronically depressed robot. But you don't want to know that. Okay. So it is now 8:30. Thank you so much, Nick. I'll have you back. Thank you for being here. Plug your shit. I'm sorry, my husband. We have very squeaky doors in my bedroom, so I'm so sorry.
My show is In Time. We have a couple of different programs. We have, and yeah, there's In Time, Downtime, Overtime. Those are our breaking news shows. We hit a lot of stuff even before mainstream media gets to it. We have a really great research team that finds stuff. Sorry, I said before social media gets to it. I think before mainstream media, we've covered things.
Oh, you have a crackpot team of.
We have Crackerjack team of we have some really good guys. And then there's the miracle show where I get only 5 minutes to talk about a topic. We call that Nick of Time. And so we got a whole bunch of shows, but we're going to be doing Downtime in just a half hour. I think. I don't know if anyone you may have gotten the link for Downtime.
So what do you do at Downtime?
Downtime is recently we've been talking news, but Downtime is our unofficial. We actually have a fireplace going. It looks just like this. I'm going to be there in about a half hour, and we try to talk about a subject, whatever that subject is. Recently, it's been more news. One time, we had a whole show on how to train dogs and what that teaches us about animals and operant conditioning.
I don't train dogs, but I would like I have cats. But that sounds like an amazing conversation.
It is not open math big. We do have open shows. That's the After Dark. We haven't done one of those in a while. We should do that. But it's usually me and a guest sometimes. So that's
I gotta get Maya on my show.
You do. You absolutely
I'm unofficially inviting you, Maya. I'll fuck you later. Like, this is how it happens. Anywho, so anyway, I might actually come for Downtime since I'm not doing anything in half an hour. So I'll come hang out for you coming here, and maybe I'll like be more involved in your content. I'm terrible. Listen, everybody. Like, I know so many fucking content creators that I just don't have time. I will subscribe and I will support your shit. Will I always watch it? No, but I will.
I'm down in Troll Titan. Because you need to get him back for all the that's
Titan, if you come with me, then we can be friends and hang out.
He's got enough. He's building an army. My suspicion is he's building an army. Of course, he doesn't need an army. He's a Titan, but
he's a Titan. He's an army onto himself. Is it like a sub-level? Is Titans like the same as Greek gods, or is it like above a Greek god? Like.
If I recall, the Titans were parallel to Greek gods. So Titans could destroy Greek gods. They weren't as powerful in terms of being able to create or do anything like that, but they actually could challenge the gods themselves.
We stand corrected.
He does have an army. Oh, great. That's just what I wanted to hear.
That's right. Well,
I may not be showing up to Downtime tonight. I don't. I'm me. They were the fathers of the gods. That's right. Yeah. Yep. So that's it. So I hope you guys will come join us, and and check out if you check out our breaking news too, you'll see we've on major stories. We knew where Prigozhin was and how deep he had gone into Russia, and had been covering it for 4 hours before the Associated Press even picked it up. Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, none of them had it. And then they're like, "Oh, Prigozhin may have invaded Russia. May have invaded. Here's him shaking hands with the guy at the border patrol. Here's him shooting at a few people at this city. Here's him doing this." It's just like, it's like, I'll tell you where he is right now if you want. You can go have.
If you want to know. All right. Oh, awesome. I think that. Okay. Wow. That's pretty cool. All right. Now I'm going to have to do that for news. Okay. So, go, like I put in I'm going to put in the Jubilee do. I also put in the chat. Go subscribe to Nick's channel. Watch his shit. Because he's an awesome human being. So you should do that. Next week, John Gleason, Godless Engineer, is going to be here. We're going to talk about the rise of Christian nationalism in the United States. So that's next week. So come for that. And I don't have my schedule up in front of me, but I'll let y'all know, so it will be announced. Please subscribe, do the things. That's really helpful. Tell people to come hang out here. And if you would like to be a guest, email me here. So do that. I will vet you, as I said before, because I got some people. I was just like, too much free thinking. a little too much free thinking. So, it's too much. So that is it. Everybody have a great week. Give someone a compliment. Be skeptical. Be kind. And I will see you all next Thursday. Bye.
Thank you so much.